sit here, and then Sophia, you'll come and sit here, and then when we're done, you'll stay there. So we'll all be on stage at the end, because the idea is then we can have a group conversation, right? There's the opportunity to come back to you, right? If you don't want to do it, it's fine, but that's the kind of, it's a build, if you like, right? And have fun. What's that? I know. Great, thanks. And you'll use this. Are we starting?
Yeah, apparently.
Wow.
You got the clicker?
I think so. Do that. Silence. Silence. Hey everyone. You made it. We made it to O&A 2023. Give yourselves a clap. Philadelphia, another year down. Greetings. Lovely to see you all. My name's Jonathan from Canva. Good morning. Before we get going, I just want to do something that's really important to us at Canva and in Australia that we always do at a gathering like this, which is to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting here today and to pay our respects to the First Nations people, their elders, and First Nations people everywhere. So, a little bit of housekeeping. I'm not tweeting or Xing or whatever we're calling it now, by the way. This is the remote. It's a great feature in Canva that you can have multiple remotes for a deck. So I'm just clicking through on my screen, and we might actually have a little bit of a, let's have a little bit of a reveal. Before we dive in, a bit of housekeeping. There's going to be time for questions today. Lots of time for questions. In fact, throughout there'll be opportunities for question. There's a mic here, so you can come to the mic, but it'll be at the end, it'll be the end of each section. So when we have our special guests come up and we'll have a little bit of a Q&A, there'll be an opportunity at the end of each of those bits to have a chat. Going back, of course, we're here all week to have a chat, so we won't do it all in this time, and we'd love to catch up with you throughout the week. And if you're thirsty, and if you don't get juiced enough by this session, come and have a juice at our Creative Juices stand just outside. And bathrooms, restrooms just out to the left if you need to take a break. The three of us from Canva and Flourish, Di, Georgia, and myself, will be up here, and a panel of very special guests. We're really hoping to give you a deep and broad dive in around Canva today. And all of our guests are experts in this realm that we're all finding ourselves in, which is visual journalism. We're all visual journalists now. We're all operating in this incredibly saturated, crowded visual economy, and all of our news brands and sometimes our personal brands are really needing to strike through with brand consistency and build that trust relationship that we have with our audience. And that's what we're on about here today. As you do the thing all day, every day that makes you good at what you do, which is create, managing, and delivering stories. And you need to do it with speed, you need to do it easily, and you need to do it with brand consistency. That's what we're all about. And we've been doing this work for more than 3 years at Canva, really focused on journos and newsrooms, and we do that with a journalistic lens. My background is, as a journalist, spent more than 20 years. My name's Jonathan. I'm a recovering journalist. I spent 20 odd years, mostly sort of a combo of reporting and producing. Show around 60 Minutes Australia for 4 years, and then a bunch of field reporting, and then a bunch of time out in the field with ABC Australia. And the real relevance, I think, here is when I was doing this work, sort of late 90s, early noughties, picked up a digital camera at a time before we had videographers and VJs, and started playing and discovering that opportunity of being a solo journo. And it gave me this incredible passport to cover the conflicts in Kashmir at that time. It was Taliban 1.0. Spent a lot of time, spent the best part of 3 years in and out of Afghanistan. One of the few videographers at that time in that country, ended up there on September 11. And that was the start of a journey for me, which was really looking at the overlap or the nexus between technology and visual journalism, as I think of it now, and that's the road that's led me to this work at Canva, which I'm incredibly honoured and proud to do and to be here with you today. So, for those who were here at, well not here, but at ONA last year, it's been quite a year for us at Canva in the 365 and a quarter days. Since then, our newsroom templates, our publicly facing newsroom templates, have been downloaded more than 32 million times. So it gives you a sense of the company that you're in and the way in which Canva's being used in the journalistic space. Last year we featured two great partners, USA Today, that you would all know, that have been using Canva in a really incredible leadership way. In the years since, they've just gone from strength to strength. Their Instagram growth continues to go off the chart. I've started calling it the Canva kick, which is every news business and newsroom who start using Canva for their socials see this phenomenal growth in user engagement and audience growth, and that continues for USA Today. And their most non-real asset was shared more than 24,000 times. Apparently about a hammerhead worm. I don't think we have hammerhead worms in Australia, but I feel like we should. We should like have all these other kind of fun things like spiders, but not hammerheads. At the other end of the spectrum, the Daily Oz, a really great Australian-based startup focused on a younger news-consuming audience. In fact, they're focused on news consumers that are not interested in the news, and they've done incredibly well, built entirely on Canva. For those of you who were last year, their growth continues. They're just having really strong growth, both on Insta, their emails are going through the roof, building out on TikTok, etc. So again, just as an update, these guys continue to get this great momentum with Canva at the heart of their workflow. And today, for all of you, it's really about leveling up. We're working on the basis that most of you, many of you, will be using Canva. We will do a little bit of a basic level set for those who are new to it. We're going to talk product, we're going to talk about partners, we're going to talk presentations, we're going to talk data visualization, and a whole lot more. So hoping to go deep and broad and wide. It's a 2-hour session, so everyone's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Hopefully you're caffeinated, hopefully you're not too hungover yet. It's great to be the first session here today, and we're incredibly thankful to the folks at ONA, to Hannah and the whole team, for the opportunity to take such a big part of this event, because it really is one of the premier events on the calendar. So, I would like to introduce to you someone who will be familiar to a lot of you, my colleague, my co-worker, Diana, who has spent more than 2 years really co-leading and building out the nuts and bolts of the work that we've been doing in the newsroom space. Many of you will know her as someone who's helped you set up environments, set up templates, set up, get going, get up that speed, etc. And it's a great pleasure to welcome Diana to the stage.
Thank you.
Diana, just tell us a little bit, like as I said, you've been working at Canva for nearly 4 years, in this space for more than 2. You've come to this work with an experience in, I guess, strategic comms and a particular lens there. Just quickly tell us about that.
Yeah, thanks. Look, hi everyone. As Jonathan said, my name is, lots of friends in the crowd. My name is Diana, I believe, and it's a real honour to be here, standing here talking to you this morning. So as Jonathan mentioned, yes, I do come from a strategic communications background, and when trying to sort of put it in perspective with this audience, I guess it comes down to this, that I too was a storyteller, and I'm a storyteller across multiple different formats, whatever the moment, whatever the client. And I guess when I was still working in agency world, we too were navigating this really awkward digital transformation, especially in the media space, where boring PDFs, presentations and docs just weren't going to cut the mustard. So sticking to what we were always done in a very generic and non-inspiring way meant that we weren't doing service to the content we were working on, and it certainly meant that we weren't servicing the editorial needs of the journalists and the media outlets that we were partnering with. So where does that leave me? I guess my work has always been about empowering businesses, brands, journalists to tell stories with impact. And it's been a really, really lovely transition to come across to Canva, because at its core, Canva is about empowering the world to design. So that's what I love about it. And for those of you who don't know what or who Canva is, I'm just going to do a quick set the scene. So bear with us, be a couple of minutes. Oh, and now I can't get the presentation to work. So, our mission from the very beginning has been to empower the world to design, empowering everyone to design absolutely anything with every ingredient, with every language, and on any device. To put it in perspective, right now, there are more than 200 designs being created in Canva every single second. We cater to over 100 languages. We're available in over 190 countries. We're completely device agnostic. So you could say we are one of the most accessible content creation tools available in the world. And the last 18 months has been a real rocket ship for us. So much so, this Friday, we're actually celebrating our 10th birthday, which is amazing, and we're super excited. But you need to go back to 2012 to really understand why Canva was founded and the overarching problem we're trying to solve. Design used to be complicated and hard. Whether that was finding the right fonts, whether that was finding photography, B-roll, finding the right tool to create the content that you need, finding a way to distribute it, finding a way to share it with colleagues and collaborate, a way to publish it. The process was hard. It involved far too many tools. It required often a steep learning curve, which meant very few people had the scale, like it was not scalable. It meant some people couldn't go on holidays because they were the only people who knew how to use those said tools. And above all else, it was often quite costly. Now the entire design ecosystem has been integrated into one place. And the world's leading media organisations are powered by Canva. And I think the fact of the matter is that Canva has everything that you and your team needs to create visual content. And we'll dive into this a lot later on, but before we do, I just also wanted to give you a quick update on some of our latest product developments and highlight the role that AI is playing in the future of our product offering. We see AI as a collaborative tool, as your creative partner, to give you something more, something where you don't have to start from a blank slate. In March this year, we had Canva Create, and our wonderful head of experiential is in the crowd today. And we launched a bunch of new AI-powered tools. These tools can trim time off your projects and sprinkle that little bit of magic that you need to give your content that little bit more oomph. So we have Magic Eraser. Now, I don't know about you, but when someone photobombs an image of mine, it's not great. And when you find that there's an object in the photo that you don't want, again, it's a pain. You can now easily erase those with this feature. And I'm finding that a lot of media outlets are actually using this feature to make extra space in pre-existing content. So whether that's extra space for text, for their images, it's been a game changer in that regard. Next, we have Magic Edit. So it lets you easily add or replace something in an image. Now, this is an emerging space for all of us, and the applications are still evolving. But we've got a news partner in Australia who's actually using this feature in a really cool way. They're creating a lot of podcast art and a lot of YouTube thumbnails with this feature. Drawing. If you're like me and you've got to sketch things out, this is the tool for you. It enables you to do like freehand drawing in the product, so underlines or annotations. You can do sketching. If you do a circle, it'll automatically, I guess, tart that up to make it the perfect circle for you. So any of those shapes, it will do it automatically. It's a great way to create flow charts, mind maps, and more. And we've seen this with a lot of teams, especially newsroom teams, where they need to conduct like team design thinking exercises or storyboarding or mapping sequences or even technical workflows. Now, when it comes to captivating videos, music is one of the most important ingredients to get right. It's not just about having the right track to support your content, but it's to make sure that's used in a really dynamic way, and that's where Beatsync comes in. So Beatsync will automatically match your video footage to the soundtrack. You don't need to manually do it anymore. So if you've got a song in mind and you want to add a soundtrack to your videos, You can upload your own content, or you can jump into the library and use some of the existing content that's there. And what's also good news is we've just signed a deal with Warner Music, I believe. So between September and October, you'll have access to some of their artists. So if you're thinking Ed Sheeran, a bit of Cher, a bit of Kylie Minogue, whatever takes your fancy, you'll find them in the editor as well. So it's a really exciting time on that front. Now, this is my last one before we jump into the really exciting stuff. And I think this is one of the most underrated tools in Canva, and it's the Canva Assistant. So we're all time poor, and I think when you need that little extra hand to find things quickly, this is a go-to tip. It searches for eye-catching elements, it provides quick access to features, it gives you design recommendations, it connects you to the AI-powered design tools. It is essentially the entire Canva library that you find on the left-hand side, all available in this little search button. So look, that's kind of it. That's a little taster for you all. Don't forget, if you want to do a deep dive, we're here all week. You've seen our stand outside. Please come and have a chat. More than happy to unpack all of this with you. And yeah, now back to you.
Right,
Connor.
thanks Di. We'll be hearing a lot more from Di, giving us hot tips throughout this session. So we're really trying to weave in the stories of how our partners and other newsrooms and journalists are using the product with keeping you guys up to date, not only with the new releases, but also with how to do it. So there'll be lots of show and tell. Thanks, Di. Okay, let's welcome our first guest. I want to just give a little bit of context around Kat and SBS. SBS is one of the national broadcasters in Australia. In 21, back to 2020, when we first started doing this work, SBS was one of the early innovators, one of the early adopters, and they've really been pioneering Canva, and I think we're going to learn a lot. So please welcome Kat Boyce, the social lead for SBS. Hi, Kat. Coming up. Take a seat. This is for you. Glad you got your phone. Hi. Maybe turn that on. Try. See. Give that a go. There we go. Fantastic.
Works better if it's turned on.
Yep, it is. Hi.
Hi.
Tell us about SBS, just for folks who won't be so familiar with the Australian media landscape. What does SBS stand for and what's it all about?
Okay, good question. So for those who are not familiar with SBS, we are one of 2 public broadcasters in Australia, but our model is a little bit different, and we're partly commercial as well because we have to hustle for that cash. Basically, SBS stands for the Special Broadcasting Service, and we started out in 1975 as a 3-month experiment because the government wanted to announce a new national healthcare scheme, and they realised that a lot of non-English speaking migrants might not have access to information that they would need to know about this service and the launch. So they started this 3-month trial of translating a 4-hour pre-record of the information into 8 languages, and they broadcast that across Australia. And I guess it's pretty safe to say that after almost 50 years, the experiment was a goer, and they decided to continue with the Special Broadcasting Service. And we're now presenting news and current affairs and special programming in over 60 languages across Australia.
And that's TV, online, radio, the full suite, right?
That's right. So we started out just like a pre-recorded audio broadcast, but now, yeah, we have a TV channel. We broadcast the World Cup. We have...
and Eurovision.
And Eurovision,
right,
yes. We are the home of Eurovision in Australia. We have an online presence, so I work for SBS News, which is our digital news offering. We also have 3 news bulletins, so TV news bulletins, one in Arabic, one in Mandarin, and one in English. And of course, we still exist in the audio space in a really big way. We have an app. We have a lot of great podcasts, both in language and in English as well.
Yeah, so why I think SBS is so relevant for anyone in this room is it's a case of a media business that both has this scope and scale and size, but is also really innovative, right? And so we've seen that in the way you guys have adopted Canva and used that over the last 3 or so years. Let's just give folks a little bit of a sense of some of the content that you guys are using or creating, and I'll just kind of go through to, so obviously you're on multiple platforms, right? It's a multi-platform approach.
Yeah, it is a multi-platform operation. This is all mainly kind of social media, so you can see like we're doing everything from breaking news cards for SBS News. We're making series on YouTube, so that's the little Breaking the News. It's a comedy news series. This one is from our audio and language content creators. So what they do is they create these videos using a template in Canva, and then they distribute it for translation so that any of the language channels that want to share this information with their audiences can just pick that up, swap out the text into their language, and then share that as well.
You mentioned breaking the news. This is just an example. Just tell us how this, obviously using Canva here, tell us about this kind of work.
That's right. So the idea for this was, it was a bit of an experiment, which meant that we didn't have a lot of resources to put into it. So
unlike most news.
Yeah, exactly. So we created this in Canva as the kind of series title. So this we can swap out only the image. So all of the motion graphics and everything is from Canva. And we just need to swap out the feature image each time to replace it with a new guest and topic, which makes it really, really fast to do.
How long does that take?
Oh, like 10 minutes, not even.
And before Canva?
We probably wouldn't have made something like this before Canva, because it would take, the video producer's time to make it. And yeah, with the motion graphics and everything, we probably may not have done something like this for this specific project.
Cool. And I wanted to also dive into this strip, because one thing that I've always liked about you guys is I learn a lot about how you can use the product by the way you guys play. What's going on here? Because this feels, I'm like, what doc type is this? Like, what are these dimensions?
It's a little bit like, we kind of do experiment a lot, and our design team are really great with Canva too, because they'll help us to experiment, and sometimes they go wild with it too. So it's actually not the best example, apologies, but the idea here was that when you have an Instagram carousel and you swipe to the next slide, you can put an image or a graphic in between the line between two of these square boxes, and the image will carry on to the next slide. So we have successful versions of this, but yeah, this was the idea. So then we create like this as a template, and then cut it up and share it as an Instagram carousel. Yeah,
I mean, what I love about it is I'd never seen anything like this done. There's probably 4 other ways to problem solve for it, but this is what you guys have done, and it's a great example of let's get in there, have a play. I guess the design team kind of creating the template and the format, and then the journos can then just spit it out and pump it out.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I want to kind of pull back for a second, because one thing I think that's really important around how you all think about, and maybe a quick show of hands if I could quickly, like who's actually using Canva here? Like who's really all day, every day? Okay, so there's a good kind of critical mass of familiarity with it. My guess is you're driving the car in first, maybe second gear, right? And there's 20 gears that you could be driving in. And we want to try and unpack that a bit and try and get you to third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and beyond today. And it all starts with setting up the brand kit, getting organized, right? Like, we always talk about creating, managing, and delivering content and stories, and that management piece is really key, right? You're a big team, you've got distributed teams all over the place. Let's just talk about, I love this because this is a great example of the multiplicity, the many brands that you've got at SBS. So just, yeah, talk to us about the brand hub and the way that's set up.
Yeah, sure. So again, we are blessed to have a graphic design team. They are, we still do a lot with a small team, but they set this up for us using all of our assets. So what we love about this is that it frees them up to do really like motion graphics and really kind of creative things that they do for our TV news bulletins and things like that. But yeah, so our brand hub, you can see we've got all of our brands here, and each of these teams, they just need to select their brand kit and it will lock in. So we've just been tied first for the most trusted news brand in Australia, which is really exciting for us. But we know that trust and integrity, like, you have to be recognisable, and you're all journalists, you know this. And especially in this new kind of world that we're in now with social media, like, verification is not guaranteed, so you need to have really clearly branded assets. And that's what we use the Brand Hub for, so that whoever in the team is making the content, and it could be anyone, it could be a journalist, it could be a video or social producer or somebody else, they can just jump into the brand kit, and the logo, the fonts, the colours, everything is locked there, and they can't go too rogue with it, which is really
good. I love it. And I think, Di, we might dive into the SBS environment, and I may need to unlock the laptop.
I need your thumbprint, please.
Excuse me while I just fingerprint. There we go. How's that? Hopefully we won't need to do that too many times. I think that's, well, we see from the data, that's one reason why we get this Canva kick, because it reinforces that trust relationship, right? Colin, we might switch to the demo. Who knows about, just another show of hands, who knows about element controls, like being able to lock down components within a template in the room? Like, you might know about brand controls, you no doubt using templates, but to folks, who knows how to actually lock or partially lock an element within a template? A couple. Great. Not enough though. This is a really important, dare I say it, unlock, because especially when you've got the team spread out across the nation, and we're going to hear from Christy in a second around a team that's spread out across the world. I think this is a really important piece. So, Di, just let's dive into. It'll be SBS. We'll just dive into.
I don't want to take over your computer.
No, please do. It should be. Yeah, try and Chrome. Is it? There we go.
That one?
Oh, yeah, try that. Happy days.
Don't mind us.
Yeah, okay, great. We'll get a little tour of my
do some
desktop.
elevator music.
Yeah, talk
Dun,
amongst
dun, dun,
yourselves.
dun, dun.
Is that in SBS or not? There we go. We'll find it soon enough. So I think, the point is with the brand hub and the brand kit, you've think of it as tiers, right? You've got the SBS mothership, and then within that, it's not just news, it's not just NITV, which is your national Indigenous TV network, right? It's not just food, and we're also going to talk languages in a second as well. Remember, is it 60 languages?
More than 60, yeah.
Right, it's crazy. So you've got multiple layers of controls. So, Di, you can see there, like that's the brand kit we were looking at, and let's just click on SBS News, for example. Then within that, you've got all of the different ranges of logos, different colors, reliefs. They've got the color palette there, the fonts, and you can keep going also with icons, photos. You can really have that depth of brand kit and brand kits within the brand hub, right? Let's dive into a template, because I think this is where the rubber hits the road. If we go to, perfect. So this is, what's this, Kat? This is your breaking news template?
This is not the breaking news one, but this is one of our, we call them just like a single headline card.
Uh-huh,
yeah. So
and you clicked on the template?
Yes, I
Di,
did.
so
Sorry,
that's
do that
created, here we go, great. Click on the template, and that creates a fresh copy, right? It's always going to create a copy if you click on the template. Perfect. And so, for example, have you got the headlines over a few lines? This is about 13 words. Is that partially locked down at all? Have you got a lock on that?
It should be locked down, and if it's not, could you please lock it, Diane?
Yeah. So you can see there, you go down to lock, and you've got two options there. You've got the full lock, which will make it unchanged from headlines over a few lines, is about 13 words, which is probably not what you want to publish. But a partial lock, which is what Di's just applied, means the element doesn't move, but you can change the words all day, every day, right? So wherever the journo is, whether they're in Sydney or Melbourne or Bullabacanka, right, that's going to be consistent, right? Fantastic.
That's right. And the reason we have this, and it might seem like a bit funny, headlines over a few lines, this is about 13 words, but that is actually super useful. It's like a hot tip.
Yeah.
Because if you work out your minimum font size, for accessibility is a pretty big deal to us. So we want it to be really visible on mobile. And we've worked out, like, this is our minimum font size for all of our cards, and it keeps it looking really consistent too across your grids. So then the journalist or the social producer just has to work out, how am I going to tell this story and how am I going to get this headline under about 13 words? And it's fun and it's challenging, but it's also really great. And having that kind of visual cue there is a little bit of a reminder as well. So it's good.
And then, of course, you can just update the photo, just
That's
pull that
right.
across
Yeah,
the
you just
page.
drag it. And because we have a digital newsroom, so we have a website, a lot of the time we're just dragging the feature image from the article directly from the website into Canva, which is great.
Cool.
Yeah.
And is the logo always top left-hand side?
Yes.
And is that locked?
I
It
can
should
confirm that
be,
is locked.
yes.
That is, and that's a full lock.
That's
right?
a full lock. I
That's-
can't even move it.
Right. So this is where, similar time with SBS, ABC, sort of the other national broadcaster in Australia, my former
It's
employer.
okay, we're friends.
Yeah, that's right. It's this kind of frenemies. They came to us and just said, all we care about is having the logo locked in the top left-hand corner because, journos are moving it all around all the time. I was like, that's the easy stuff, right? So, but a lot of folks don't do it, and that full lock, partial lock, element control is a really, really great one for you to know and to exercise for your team. Okay, so I think it's time for some hot tips.
Brilliant.
Colin, could we
Switch back, please.
bounce back to Fabulous, our Prezi? We're going to talk languages in a second, but Di, do you want to walk us through the evolving nature of news brands?
For sure. So as we've just gone through, we've gone through and shown you what the brand section of Canva looks like, and it's a dedicated area just for your brand. And we've done some updates of late, which is to provide you with more control. So more control of how your brand is being used to create content. And Jonathan alluded to it before, but it's not just logos, fonts, and color palettes anymore. You've got that added extension of graphics, icons, and images. So if you have some of those hero images that form part of your overarching brand, you can now apply those. And it's just super easy to be able to drag and drop and see what you need from there. Also, brand guidelines. Now, again, ex-strategic communications expert here. I used to create style guidelines for all of my clients, and I think they created them and put them in a desk drawer and they never opened them again. But those core parameters are now available in the editor as well. So you can stipulate color palettes, how logos can be applied only on certain colors, whether they need to remain on a white background or they need to remain transparent. Whatever the rules are, you can articulate them right here. Now, if you're going through a rebrand or evolution of your brand, that often comes hand in hand with many changes when it comes to your collateral and your content. And sometimes they're subtle, but they're changes nonetheless. And the process used to be really tedious to update everything. It was a very manual and laborious process. But now you can do it with one click. So you can magically replace your logos and your brand imagery across all of your existing designs in Canva really quickly. and your brand assets are right where you need them most. So your entire brand kit is now available in the editor. So when you are in the middle of designing that social card, breaking news, a listicle, whatever the case may be, you will find your entire brand kit on the left-hand side. You don't need to jump back to the home page, refer to your brand guidelines. You'll find them all in there. And there's some very slight UX updates that we've had as well. So pin to folders. If you've got a favorites folder, or maybe you've got, I don't know, like your news team, your social team, everything's filed in different places, you can now pin those onto your homepage so that you know where to get them. They're the first things you see when you log into Canva. Same goes with brand templates. They're not hidden away somewhere, they're right front and center because they're the things that you use the most. And the last point that I'll have here is that you can now share content across multiple teams. So if your outlet has multiple teams, or you're like Jonathan and myself where we get brought into everyone else's team and you're sitting at about 40 to 100 different teams, you can now share content quite easily between one group and another. And the last point that I'll have is, I did mention earlier on that Canva can cater to 100 different languages, including 5 right to left languages. And excitingly, we now have a brand new feature called Translate, where it will translate the text in your design to nearly any language. I think at the moment, we're sitting at about 134 different languages to choose from. So this feature is incredibly useful when you are talking to a global audience, or perhaps you're talking to a real, like a hyper-local community. Whatever the case may be, this tool is fly. I love it. That's it. That concludes my hot tip number 1.
Thanks, Di. But what we do find is that Canva's not great at translating American English into Australian, so we often find we have some linguistic challenges at Canva. It's like, what are you saying? Okay, brilliant. Let's talk about languages to wrap up this section. More than 60, like no one lives the language piece more than SBS. How does Canva fit into that piece for you guys?
Okay, well, I mean, there's some examples here. So, hot little piece of information that you might not know from the census, but 22% of Australia speaks a different language at home. 27% of our population were actually born overseas. So we're servicing over 60 languages. Part of what we do as well, every 5 years, we use census data and whatever's going on in the world to cause migration, and we kind of re-decide through a process of like which languages need us most, and that kind of shifts and changes ever so slightly every 5 years. But these are some examples of how our audio and language content teams are using Canva, and they're really innovators in this space, I think. They do amazing work, and part of what they do is they create a piece of content in Canva. So sometimes the journalists are writing in language, they're news gathering in language, they're publishing articles in their specific language, so you might have something from SBS French or SBS Arabic, and they're sharing that content with SBS News so that we can publish it in English, and we have an input and output editor to do that. So we might take some of their content, but we want to translate it into English, but the assets are already made. So we might just swap out a couple of little pieces of our brand to make it consistent with our brand, and then also still give them the source credit as well. And it works in the reverse. So they might take a story from SBS News in English and say, yeah, this is really going to speak to our community. It might be like a story about immigration. It might be a story about their specific community. It might just be news, because just because they speak a language other than English doesn't mean that they're not just as interested in all Australian news. And a lot of our audiences also, they're consuming in language, but they're also consuming in English. Yeah. So they might not, necessarily need to see the same content twice. But yeah, so we use Canva. That team creates the document, or the project as you call it, and they just distribute it to the teams. And it's like, hey, if you want to translate this, here it is. The asset's made, you just need to swap out the text. And a lot of the time that's what happens. So the Ramadan explainer that we showed earlier, the little video, This has been translated into, I think, 5 or 6 different languages. And it's a video, so that's great content and great for engagement. And they've just had to swap out the text, and all the imagery and everything remains the same. So yeah,
Amazing.
It's a real time saver, and it means that it furnishes these channels that sometimes are operating on a pretty skinny staff with visual assets,
Incredible.
which is amazing.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, so lots there, thank you. I know we have a slide for, oh, my clicker's not working, there we go, for questions. But what I might do is, as we chat here, I think there's going to be some similarities with some similar questions, or some resonant questions with our next guest, Christy. So we might actually pause for questions and bundle those together. I'm going to ask you to join the press table of truth. Take a seat here. Give it up for Kat and SBS. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to, as mentioned with SBS, really bringing the world to communities in Australia. Our next special guest, Christy, is really kind of done the inverse, which is bringing local communities to the world. Give it up for Christy Higrenis, the founder of Global Press. Hi, take a seat, take a mic.
Thank you. Hey,
Christy, what is Global Press?
So
And how did, tell us your story, tell us the kind of origin story. It might be a good place to start.
Yeah, sure, happy to. Hi, everyone. Growing up, all I ever wanted to be was a foreign correspondent, traveling the world, telling its stories. I actually got my first opportunity to go overseas as a reporter when I was in my early 20s. And, it took me about 9 days of being in country to really come to a powerful realization that these were not my stories to tell. I was the wrong person to be telling these stories, right? And I really started to unpack a lot of the limitations, a lot of the colonial influences, power disparities with foreign correspondents, right? I lacked social, historical, political, linguistic context to tell real, true stories. And so that's where the idea for Global Press came to be. So today, Global Press trains and employs women journalists in some of the least covered, most challenging parts of the world. We operate what is like a mini master's in journalism for local women journalists from, Democratic Republic of Congo to rural Mongolia. And then we provide them long-term, high-quality employment, salaries, health benefits, vacation, and one of the industry's leading duty of care programs to make sure that they're able to really produce high value, high impact, but comprehensive coverage of these communities. We find that more than 90% of foreign correspondence tends to center on just 4 topics: war, poverty, disaster, disease, right?
Yeah.
That's the story of the world.
Yep.
So
Guilty as charged.
we forgive you. And so, I think that is a huge part of our remit, is to really tell stories differently, to help people understand the world differently, understand their place in the world differently.
Yeah.
So we put a really high value on the visual appearance of our brand and our stories for that reason.
That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about some of that, like how you show up in the world, because we're going to talk about how you use Canva, both outward facing for the audience, but also in other areas as well.
Yeah, so Global Press produces stories in 7 languages every day, and our stories really focus on consequence-driven feature and investigative journalism. So we are really prioritizing telling stories outside of the breaking news context, again, to really help people understand the world in fuller context. One thing that's great for everybody in this room to know is that all Global Press stories are available for free for any partner. And we do find that our stories do incredibly well with US newsrooms, particularly those in locations that serve diaspora audiences, right? Diaspora and migrant audiences tend to be very underserved by traditional news organizations. So for example, in Texas, we have 6 partners in the state of Texas who take Global Press stories in English and in Spanish to really help provide deep context, but also really high impact coverage that they don't have the resources to produce on their own.
I love that. So in a sense, you're both B2C and B2B, right? And you're serving both those audiences and that ecosystem in countries that don't have the kind of good fortune of an SBS in Australia, right?
right,
Which
yep.
is just fantastic. So that's a ton of content,
It is,
right?
it is.
And you know, as I say, not just audiences, but you're also feeding journalists and that ecosystem. So I think you're really changing the landscape in a really interesting way. How does Canva power that? Because that's a ton of content. You're the kind of extreme distributed team.
Yep.
And you've got a ton of languages as well.
Yep.
Where does Canva fit into that?
You know, in so many ways. So at Global Press, there are 136 of us across globally.
Right.
We have 41 bureaus across a dozen countries and support team members in 9 additional countries. So, you know, I think the challenge for us is that we have historically had one creative director on our team. And actually, I'll tell you, with her permission, a more like personal element of the story, Global Press has, for many, many years, had this one creative director who was really providing all of the design, everything for all of our bureaus. Last year, she was diagnosed with cancer, which is why I'm here today and she's not. She is on the mend and doing well. But what she was able to do before she went out on leave was template everything. And so we were able to actually keep our brand integrity high. We were able to really empower members of our team who had never done design a moment in their life to all of a sudden step in this really like challenging moment for the organization. But we were actually able to take our storytelling to the next level because she was able to template absolutely everything out. So now there are leads in each country who are doing, you know, the social designs in Canva, you know, working with like Flourish and some other tools for data visualizations in other languages. So, you know, we now have 28 users every day in Canva who are using it, everything from, you know, web page design, social media design, everything.
And what about video?
Yeah. So we use video and audio actually in a lot of ways. Global Press works across a variety of different platforms. So we're using video essentially in 3 ways. We use it on social media, we use it as embeds in our stories, but also a lot of my job is not in the newsroom, but is that to actually continuously make the case to funders and investors why Global Press is important and what the impact of our work is. So during the pandemic, I'm sure any of you nonprofit newsrooms in the room know that fundraising got real tricky, right? Because all of a sudden that like face-to-face tap dance with funders that I had been doing, you know, since 2006, I couldn't do anymore. So we really had to think creatively about, okay, how do we continue to showcase the power of our work to funders in a moment where I can't like do my typical dance in person? Yeah. So we created these impact timelines. And there's one that is playing here, and this is a really powerful story that really showcases the power of what happens when local journalists in some of the least covered parts of the world are employed to hold power to account over time. One of our reporters in rural Mongolia, her name's Korlu Kuknukoi, and she started covering in 2021 a story about forced virginity testing happening in public schools across Mongolia. And her story is widely syndicated in English and Mongolian, wide social media presence in both languages, all designed in Canva, of course. And when her story came out, the government pretty quickly responded and they were like, oh yeah, that's bad. We won't do that anymore. And across the country, people were like, yay, we win. And Korla was like, bullshit, right? Like, I'm gonna keep I'm gonna keep on this. So she went back a year later and actually proved that the practice had not stopped, even remotely. We partnered with PBS NewsHour here in the US. She went on evening news here in the US, as well as Mongolia, European countries, et cetera. And a couple of months after, in October of last year, the government outlawed the practice. Formally, an enforcement plan, it is actually like a criminal act and is no longer happening in schools, which is such a powerful testament of what local journalists are capable of. And so we use tools like this to really, in like a 90-second version, take a really challenging topic and turn it into something that funders can really digest, but also that, we use it as a team building tool as well, just to make sure that our team is, linked up on the incredible impact that our storytelling is having.
Yeah, I mean, I just love this because it's the breadth of the way you're using it, and you've not only built this incredible brand, but you've also built this incredible team and this business and in the non-profit space as well. So this stuff is actually your bread and butter
Absolutely.
to do this at scale, right?
Absolutely, and the fact that Canva is free for nonprofits is a huge, huge game changer for
Yeah,
us.
fantastic. And just the free piece is, I think we're now at 400,000 nonprofits that are powered by Canva for free. It's free up to 50 seats, which means that the lion's share of nonprofits don't need more than 50 seats. So it's free. I think the American Cancer Society is 3,000 or something, and beyond 50, if you need it, it's a really discounted rate. So that's really, really cool. Stay there. We're going to have a hot tip because we've been talking video. Di, over to you on the hot tip desk.
Thanks so much. Okay, so we'll do a hot tip on video. Now, if you're not already using Canva for video, then please start having a play. Honestly, it is so intuitive, and from making GIFs, animations, short and long form content, you can have a lot of fun with this. You can import your own files, or you can utilize some of the assets that we've already got in the library. But here's a quick snapshot of some latest editing features available. I'm breaking my own laptop. Okay, so the image background remover is by far one of the most popular features that Canva has, and it made a ton of sense to make that available to video as well. So without further ado, here's the video background remover, and it's so simple to use. You literally drag and drop the video that you want into your design, you click on it, you press edit video, remove background, done. There is no more effort involved than that. Next is captions and animations, so adding text and transitions and effects to make your content more dynamic. So when we first launched the video product, we had maybe 1 or 2 transitions available. Now we've expanded that probably twice again, and again, it will continue to evolve. Next is splitting clips. So this is really to customize your edit. So you can drag to the timeline once you upload a video, and you drag your cursor to the timeline down the bottom there, right click, and you can split it. And the beauty of splitting those is where you can add in different transitions, you can add in different copy, you could add in different audio beds. It gives you a way more bespoke product, and it also gives you a more precise edit. And adding audio. So you can do so by dragging and dropping your own MP3s, that's totally fine, or whatever's available in the library for you. Once the clip is imported, you can add it to the timeline, you can adjust levels, you can adjust fade options, and at the moment you can have 2 audio tracks for every design, which can be really useful. And the only other thing that I'll add is that QR code down the bottom there. That goes to a landing page that is purely dedicated on all things video. So whether or not you're just starting out or whether you're quite expert in this space, it is a whole resource, and it shows you the who, what, when, why, and how, some tips and tricks, some tutorials, some learn and plays, activities, you name it, you'll find it right there. That's it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Di. So this is just a good example also around, well, just talk to us, I guess, particularly also around, you've got training resources here, for example. Just give us another kind of deep dive.
Yeah, so in addition to using Canva to build out tools in the newsroom, we also use it to internally for onboarding, team building, culture management, et cetera. So all of our tools are built in Canva. So on the one side here, you can see we have like a training overview. We have a presentation on Global Press messaging, which is part of somebody's onboarding when they join Global Press. And then you can see those 2 orange presentations docs at the bottom is our reporter team policy and culture guide. There's one in English, one in Nepali. There's one in each of our languages. So we really use everything in Canva to make sure that our team is really aligned on message, and that the culture and the values of Global Press are being accurately and widely communicated across our very distributed team.
Love it. And we're seeing this in a number of different ways also. We were talking about brand guidelines as well. We're seeing businesses also more and more doing their brand guidelines and other assets like this, so it's more interactive, it's more involved, etc. Let's kind of take a click there. We're going to do another quick hot tip.
Me again, sorry.
Back to the desk.
All right, another hot tip, presentations. This is a really fun one. I don't know how many of you are using presentations as a doc type, but we have some magic shortcuts. So for instance, if I press M, I can mic drop. If I want to celebrate something, I can confetti my presentation. If you press anywhere between 1 and 9 on the keyboard, we'll start a timer. So say I'm going to do 1 minute, I can start that timer, and you can actually choose some tunes. So if you're doing a brainstorm with the team and you're going to set a time limit to it, you know, put 1 minute, choose a tune, let's do energetic. And then your whole team can just bop along. And
There was also the 1 hour wake up tune as well.
Yeah,
like we're at the
totally.
halfway mark, so come on people.
It's bang on, actually.
And the other great thing is when you've got another remote as well. Okay, now the question is, can you turn off the music?
I really can't.
No, go back.
I've broken it.
Right, we can mic drop. There we go. Oh, because the timer's run out.
Right.
The other great thing is that when you've got the remote as well, when someone's presenting, you can also wreak your own havoc. And so I'm just going to throw a drum roll in just to kind of mess with them. So they're fun little bits.
Yeah, that's my hot tip, team.
Hot tips. Di's hot tips. Okay, let's take a minute for questions. How's everyone feeling? We're an hour in. Everyone feeling energized, pumped, helpful, informative, entertaining? Yes, great. Any questions for either Christy or Kat? We've got 2 more fabulous special guests, and also coming up, I'm kind of doing the halftime coming up. George is going to give a really great deep dive around Flourish and data visualization, because I know that's a really important piece for you, and obviously everyone's staying up here as well, so there's hopefully time for more questions at the end. If you have a question, the mic is here, and feel free to make your way.
Or you can yell it out.
Or you can yell it out. You can yell it out, and we can repeat it. Now we.
Go.
Yeah, one on the mic for the stream. So, okay.
You have a question? Go ahead.
Just come to the mic, if you would, please. Thank you. For the stream. It's for the peeps. Peeps
Hi,
online.
everybody. This is Madiha, and I have a question from both of you. You can answer because I have little awareness. I hope everybody does. But my question is, which tool is more easier for us? For instance, if we use
Canva. The
Canva
answer's
on phone, on computer, on tab. And what I'm seeing that there is a subscription offer also. So what we can do if we don't want that subscription, because that is a little expensive for student like me. So what is the option for us to excel the expertise in this particular field? Thank you so much.
Great. Do you want to take that, or shall I?
You can.
Great. Okay. So firstly, let's come and chat afterwards as well. Canva for Education is education usage is one of our biggest parts of Canva. It's about 25% or so. Canva is free for most education facilities as well. So making Canva accessible to students is a really key thing. And it might be via your institution that there's an opportunity there to get it as well. The free product has a ton of functionality, like a ton of functionality as well. So maybe let's also find out where those pain points are for what you need that you might not be getting in Canva, and we can chat more about that. In terms of the device question, laptop, phone, desktop, as Di said, it's all the functionality is there on the same, so it's just a question of what's the best context. I use laptop a ton. We're seeing more and more journos using Canva on mobile out in the field, which is really cool. So it's more about the context of your usage than the functionality, because the functionality is consistent.
Can I add a piece of context
Yeah,
to that
please.
too? I will tell you that when we onboard somebody into Canva to start being the country representative to use the tool for the first time, it's a 45-minute onboarding, and that's all it takes, and then they're fully up and running.
Fun fact, I love it. G'day.
Hi, thanks for being here. You showed examples of news organizations being able to remove and add content to images. That, of course, would be a major ethics violation and erode trust in images. So I'm curious that for news organizations, can you lock down some of those image modification tools in the same way that you can lock down design elements?
It's a really good question.
You can't, to best of my understanding, you can't lock down the functionality of the tools, but you can lock down access to the images, right? So the beauty of the brand controls, so we showed you element controls, but there are also brand controls to get really clear guidelines for the team, which means that, and this is really important for distributed teams, so that they're always going to be in that laneway for colors, fonts, icons, photos as you apply. So yes, absolutely, in terms of that library, but not the actual, generally not the functionality. Like we wouldn't remove an array's functionality. And I just think it was interesting, the example that Di was using also, the context they were using it in was not an editorial context, it was in a promotional context. It was like for their thumbnails and images and that sort of stuff. But let's chat more and I can show you some of those brand controls as well.
There's one more thing that I could add is that as part of your brand controls, there is an option to have an approval process. So for instance, if you were to have someone who is like the custodian of whatever content gets pushed out to market, that can actually go through a workflow within Canva. So anyone who designs it, that person will be notified, they can review it, they can yay or nay, they could start collaborating in real time, providing feedback, and so then that person will always have oversight and final say before anything gets pushed out to market.
Thanks.
No problem.
One more quick question and then we'll go to our next special guest.
I'm not sure how quick my question is, so
Okay.
I can always
We can
talk
take it off. Yeah.
offline. But so this is both for Christy and for Kat, and these are both two separate but related questions, and maybe you could do a quick overarching summary and I could touch base after, but I love how you talk about, enabling your whole workforce in using Canva, and I'm very interested in how you get buy-in and empower other people, from journos to your design team. Like my last newsroom, our design team would only use Adobe products, which doesn't really help everyone else, right? So we had this clear divide on who used Canva versus who used Adobe, and I'd just love to know how you really pushed that forward and got people excited about it and empowered to use it.
I'll say that the values of Canva are very much in line with the values of Global Press, right? We are all about democratizing who tells the story, changing the storyteller of record, and so for us, Canva just made logical sense because it's a very values aligned product.
Kat, quick one. Yeah, just pull that in if you. Yeah, just draw it in, Di. Just great. Won't bite.
There you go. Stand by. That's a really good question, and it applies to us also because we are a legacy organisation. So we do have a lot of those products that are still being used. Like I'm not, I'm not here to make up stories. We do still use a lot of those products. I think the way to think about it though is like it's a change, like it's a shift. It's not you can use this in the same way that you were using something else. It's about like, oh, you can use this in a really different way that maybe you haven't thought about before. So for example, for data visualization, I think that's where we got the buy-in from the graphic design team, because what used to be like manually doing mathematics to like work out how tall the graph should be, and never being 100% sure that it was absolutely accurate. Now Canva has built-in data viz, so you just punch in the numbers and it automatically creates it. So that's there's like little things that kind of bring you in, and then once you're in there, it's just about playing with it and spending time in that environment and it's fun. Like, it's built to be fun.
It's built to be fun. Let me
Yeah.
add one
Use
quick
Lego.
thing. There's a bunch of online resources as well. Like, so we've done a YouTube series, a 6-part YouTube series around sort of the basics through to the more complex areas. We never say that you wouldn't or shouldn't use the other tools, right? We really think about brand craft at scale. That craft might need to happen in a number of places for whatever reasons, whether it's legacy issues. Our superpower is then scaling that and making that accessible to the team, whether it's in media or agencies or brands, etc. And we also do what we can. We're a small team, but we also do what we can in terms of supporting onboarding, etc., depending on the size of the business. So, and Canva is fun. Christy, thank you. Give it up for Christy. Take a seat at the table of truth. It's kind of like there'll be post-match analysis questions for these guys. Okay, so we've gone from the global. Now we're going to go local, really local. In fact, a local Philly hero, someone who I think you're going to find, if my clicker works, yes, super inspiring around not just her own story, but the sorts of stories she tells and the way Canva moves in. Sophia Berlin, come on up to the stage. Give her a big round of applause. Oh, we've got walk-on music. I love it. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Andy. Hi. Take a mic.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Take a seat.
I'm going to take my time. I have a little irrational fear.
Of
with
heights?
Stools and like stages. Okay, I did it.
No,
I feel good.
both of those things are very rational fears.
Thank you,
So
thank you.
That's great. Okay, so local in Philly, I think, started out in New York. Tell us your story. First generation Jamaican American?
First generation American, so I'll try and remember
Right.
everything. Born and raised in New York, moved to Pennsylvania when I was 14, went to Temple University. I've been in Philadelphia for almost a decade, spent a quick little stint in DC. I am the creator, I'm a journalist, writer, and producer. I also refer to myself as a non-traditional filmmaker. I started out as a journalist at the Philadelphia Inquirer. Are any Inquirer folks in here?
Yeah.
Hey, hi, which is like a few blocks down there on Market Street. And while I was a features reporter covering arts, culture, and identity in the city. And while there, I created the Black History Untold project. So Black History Untold is an identity series that tells untold Black histories through powerful and personal stories, because you know we're not learning all of our history, especially Black history, in school, right? So this is a way to collect these stories through these interviews, and also talking about the impact that it has on Black people and their identity and the way that they see themselves. So I started the project there, and it wasn't long before I decided to pursue the project independently, you know, especially it being a Black project and being in a predominantly white newsroom. I wanted to tell these stories authentically, and I took that leap. There have been lots of ups and downs, and it has paid off thus far. So when we tell these stories, you know, it's very important to me as someone who is first generation to highlight the diversity within the Black community, all the different backgrounds that we come from, our different religious beliefs, our sexual orientations, and gender identities, and then telling these untold Black histories from that perspective, so that there's a fuller picture and a fuller view. So every year we produce this project through a theme. The first year I did it, I was 23 years old when I started this project. The first year I did it, it was just a general look at untold Black history. The second year, it was joy. When I did it, when I produced it independently, we did it through future, through the lens of Afrofuturism. Then after that, the Brooklyn Nets saw my work. I started partnering with the Brooklyn Nets to create a New York version of Black History Untold, telling untold stories in Brooklyn. Then we did a woman installment, and then we did the revolution installment, where we told untold stories of global Black revolution across the world. And that was the first time I really kind of produced a documentary. At first, it started off as video production, and then when it came down to screening it at the Museum of American Revolution, I was like, I can't just go up there and press play for each video. I have to connect this. I need transitions. And after premiering that, that's when I realized, oh, wow, and it's a standing ovation and a sold-out crowd. I was like, oh, snap, Sophia, you're a filmmaker. And ever since then, we've been doing more visuals. And the most recent installment has been our most successful and most loved and most visible installment, and we focused on love.
Let's take a look.
Yes. Great segue.
2020 is the year that I realized that I made the absolute best decision of my life.
The first day I laid my eyes on her, I said, this is it.
And all of a sudden she looks at us and goes, so when are you two gonna start dating? And I was like, what, girl, what?
And I was like, what? Part of the reason why we're here, why you're here, is because Black people loved each other.
It was an incredibly tense moment, and I probably gripped her hand way too tight. I didn't have to explain why I was so mad. She didn't have to explain why she was so mad. We both knew, and we were automatically there for each other.
Black love is special because Black people do it, and Black people are exceptional people. And whatever we do is exceptional. We love hard, we love deep, we love exceptional. And we are no different.
Standing in the streets in Ferguson where we met, knowing that we were out there not because we hated other people, which is what folks wanted to subscribe to us, or prescribe to us, but rather because we loved ourselves. We loved one another, we loved our communities.
We have to start to really understand that Black history is the history of this country. I love Calfree a lot. And if I had a ring today, this would be the moment. I swear, I love her so much. That's that. It's a wrap. I don't know what else to say. Black love rocks.
Black love rocks.
It does. And watching it again, I get all the feels because, you're so with it.
We all do.
Yeah, I get all the feels. And this project was produced independently in the middle of a pandemic with a very, very tight budget. And with the Love installment, it was really important because I think when we talk about Black history and Black people, we talk a lot about how post-emancipation, we fought for the right to vote, we fought for the right to go to schools the school that we wanted to, we fought for the right to live where we wanted to live. But the first thing Black people in this country did when they were freed was try and find their loved ones. And you see that in the documentary where there were ads put out saying, hey, I'm looking for my cousin. They look like this. I'm looking for my wife. Because remember, these people were sold off and they didn't know where they were. So I felt that was important to highlight. And we're able to tell these stories authentically, yes, because now I'm an independent journalist. I'm able to hire my team. It's an all-Black team, and that influences how these stories are told. And Canva has played a huge role in empowering me. And the entire documentary actually was, the treatment was built out in Canva. And it's played a huge role in empowering me and getting my visions and my visuals all out and organized on paper so that I can explain it to my team. And there's a lot less work in them visualizing things and getting the sense of everything.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the way, as I've got to know you and your work, that every step of the process is storytelling.
Yeah.
Right? Like, obviously, you're really accomplished and you've created this beautiful final result, right? I worked with a filmmaker once who once said, you do 100 edits, the one that kind of is finally screened happens to be the last one. You have to be doing an edit all the way along.
The entire way.
And that actually starts for you from concept. So I want you to show us how you put together a pitch deck. Yeah. Talk about what is West.
Okay, so Canva is very useful, especially during the development stage when I'm trying to just, again, non-traditional filmmaker, I'm just like learning this as I go, off vibes, figuring this out, somehow creating something really beautiful and impactful. So I have a lot going on in my mind, a lot of visuals, and Canva kind of helps me organize those thoughts and do that in a beautiful and concise way. So I'm working with the University City Arts League. They're a nonprofit that creates programming specifically for the communities in West Philadelphia. And they've brought me on to produce and direct a short film on the work that they're doing in West Philadelphia, but tapping into the larger story of the history and the culture there. So I created this deck to kind of give them a sense of, where I was going with the storytelling and to kind of just sometimes it's better to show than tell,
Always.
right? And, you know, having them, watching their faces as I'm showcasing, you know, the deck and watching them smile and like watching them feel it, you know, it's less of a sell when I can kind of explain it in this way. So as you can see, there are a lot of like, you might recognize Will Smith, DJ Jazzy Jeff, you know, Eve. These are prominent people from West Philadelphia, and kind of highlighting the culture and the environment that created these people and the children of this community.
Excellent demonstration of background remover. In this
Oh, yes,
slide.
yes. When I was put onto that, I was so excited. And Diana, I was watching your presentation, and we showed the background remover on video. I was like, oh, people are going to be sick of me. I'm about to be using this. Y'all are going to be so sick of me.
So I love this because like this is really clean, really simple. You've obviously just used Canva elements there in terms of the cityscape. But I love then the way as we go through, if we go through, there you go. You're bringing video in to these presentations as well, right?
And, you know, I think there is a lot of benefit for me coming from kind of an unconventional background into film. I've looked at a lot of treatments and decks that filmmakers who have been producing and directing film for years do, and I feel like sometimes it can be a little flat. And with Canva, I'm able to use a little bit more motion graphics, like these GIFs, and I can pull this so that people can really get reeled into what I'm trying to create. And then especially when I'm working with my team, like my director of photography, which we'll probably get to in the next slide, he has a sense of the angles that I'm trying to go for, the colors that I'm trying to go for. So that shot with the all black background, that's from the Revolution installment. And that, when the top right, that's the director of photography that I'm working with right now. That's from his work. So he has a stronger sense now of what I'm looking for our straight to camera shoots. In the bottom right, that woman right there, her name is Miss Jamila. She's the director of the rec center that we'll be highlighting in the documentary, Francis Myers Rec Center. So what I did was I exported that YouTube video, and I brought it into Canva. I was able to shorten it in Canva. I slowed it down to kind of match the pacing of the other shots, and I even edited the coloring as much as I could so that I can get him to understand the kind of mood lighting that I was looking for in the rec center. So if you see, she's in the rec center there. So once he saw this, he was like, I got it. I know exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, I love it. And just to echo something Kat said, the beauty of the video editor, for those who are new to it, is the workflow is all the same. Like, it's incredibly consistent in terms of the workflow that you might use for a presentation. When you get into the editor, you'll find, okay, like to slow it down, that's straight there and it's just a slider.
It's so simple. It's so simple and accessible, which I appreciate.
and sort of back in the day when I was doing docos, you know,
docos.
See, that's an, you know, that's
I like
it.
It's cute.
We need to. It's the translate function. You know, we need to pay someone, right? You know, highly skilled person. You know, their full suite. It was literally thousands of dollars before we've even pitched the idea. So, you know, I just love this.
And I'm glad you bring that up, especially being an independent project where we're constantly pitching and constantly trying to get funding. That's been a line item that I don't really have to worry about as much in terms of graphic design, or even if I am working with a graphic designer, Canva helps me kind of create kind of the sense of what I want, so that's easier for the designer to create their version.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And another one here. Also worth calling out, you know, the rich library of stock video that's in the editor as well. It's fantastic for this sort of work. Like, I need an aerial, you know, I need a snowy town aerial view. Chances are it's in there.
Or a city drone shot.
Yeah. You know, and I think also with the AI functionality as well, that search ability is getting more and more precise.
And I loved that I was able to find this because I was able to properly visualize how I want to open this documentary with just kind of like a drone shot and a slow pan over the city, and then you hear the voiceover of like a child of West Philadelphia. And they saw the visuals, and once I was explaining it, they got it and they were sold.
Yeah, and the other thing I love about this is the way you bring people along for the project. Like, I also think in that creative project, and whether it's a feature like you're working on, or, you know, a news story or a longer news story, a lot of the time I think you see the sketch in your own mind, and the heavy lift is trying to get other people to see it as well and get excited about it.
Yeah, and storytelling is a collaborative process, and I think that Canva has made it a lot easier for me to bring people into my creative process and really make it a collaboration.
Love it, and some more really cool stuff here.
Some more shots of West Philadelphia.
So, and the West Side. This is my hot tip. I'm doing a hot tip, which is just to share that inspired in large part by filmmakers, producers, directors like Sophia and others, we actually really started leaning into this space this year, and we've launched a couple of months ago a bunch of templates specifically for filmmakers and that whole workflow, right? So the way we think about it is that you're storytelling from the seed of an idea through to pitching, pre-production, you'll film or edit your feature wherever you'll do that.
Scene breakdowns,
right?
everything.
And then it's post-production, it's promotion, it's all of that. That whole arc, whether it's storyboards and of course social templates are already there. So these have been created specifically with folks like you in mind, and they're going nuts. We launched them a couple of months ago and we've had like more than 1 million downloads and usages in that time. So just search around those specific topics and you'll find some really cool stuff. And the QR code will take you to a landing page which have them all in one spot. Cool. What I think we might do is we might hold off on questions for you with Tay as well, because I think that might be the best way to...
This story where he had to cover a fallen soldier from the war in Afghanistan, and how do you represent that fallen soldier in a piece on the radio if they are not able to speak for themselves? And so Fred did his due diligence. He talked to family, he talked to friends, he talked to his dad, who happened to be a prominent anti-war protester. And he got all of these different portraits of this fallen soldier. And if you're listening to the final piece on air, you wouldn't necessarily understand all of the editorial decisions that Fred and his editor had to make in the cutting room to build this three-dimensional portrait of this soldier.
Which is familiar, of course, to a lot of people in the room, this process, but to the general public, it's not so, it's a new kind of insight. And interested, obviously, how you're using Canva. Let's just click through to the next slide, Di, if we could. 3 examples here. Talk us through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we could go on for days and days and days. Canva is part of, a lot of the stuff that we do. So obviously, promotion ahead of the event, especially when we're building a new event in a new city. We need snazzy social advertisements. We need show posters. We're working with multiple newsrooms that have different brand guidelines, et cetera. And so we're easily able to share some of this stuff with those newsroom social teams. Of course, we build the actual physical programs that you get. That program design is from an event in Atlanta with ProPublica, which was a really fun one. All our events, like Sophia, are sort of themed. And then probably the most sort of prominent use, and you've been basically experiencing it throughout this whole presentation, is that we'll use multimedia to sort of supplement our journalist performances. And so that shot there is actually a antique, I think 150-year-old cup from ancient China that was stolen from a new museum in Norway. And we had a journalist from GQ talk about these art thefts and why maybe really it wasn't theft, but repatriation. And yeah, use Canva background remover. Wow. So clutch, y'all. So
Very.
Clutch.
Love it. And of course also programs as well. So, I mean, you're again, you're kind of building your business on Canva, right?
1,000%, yeah.
I love it. And then once the events happened, and it's been a triumph and everyone's had a great time, what about sort of post-event?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we want these events to feel artful. We don't want them to feel didactic and like you're being spoken down to. We don't even necessarily want the audience members to realize that they're learning anything about journalism. How did this resonate with you all? Trust is hard to measure, but yeah, we were able to find that 90% of people who came to the show felt that seeing the journalists up on stage talking about the behind the scenes of their reporting, that it produced reliable news and information. We worked with Trusting News, which is a fabulous org, and reliability is one of 7 sort of key factors of trust that we were able to measure, and then we put them in a deck like this. This is actually, I literally copied and pasted this from one of our pitch decks that we go to organizations like the Knight Foundation, the Brown Institute for Media Innovation, and say, hey, this stuff that we're doing is having an impact. Can we have some money, please?
I love it. Really cool. Thank you. Stay there, because we're going to bring Georgia up, and it's a great segue into data visualization, because you're telling a great data story here. We'll come back to what's next in a tick. I think let's go straight to Georgia.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Georgia is from Flourish and is, for those of you who don't know Flourish, and we'll hear more, an incredible data visualization tool, part of the Canva family now. Please give it up for Georgia.
Hi, guys. Hi. Thanks, friends. Hang in there. We'll be short and sweet.
Should we do star jumps or something?
We should. I was actually
Shake
thinking,
it out a
like,
bit,
do you need a moment to stand up and stretch a little bit? Just by a show of hands, maybe as an icebreaker. See some of you cracking up. Any of you using data visualization as part of your work? Would love to see.
You can stand up and show hands as well.
Amazing.
Kind of right?
Well, I hope this is going to be helpful for you. Just wanted to give you a bit of an intro to Flourish. We're Canva's data visualization tool, created by journalists for journalists. And this is one of the lines that I think really caught my attention when I was first thinking of joining Flourish and the Canva family, and to how important data storytelling is. It's been a fantastic journey. I'm 6 months into this family, but it's been amazing to see how the products that we built actually can really change the way people understand what you're bringing through in your story. Anyway, so Flourish, just to give you a bit of background, was co-founded by Duncan and Robin, both of them pictured here. Both of them come from a website. And I promise I'm not just saying this because they're my bosses, but they're actually really fabulous people. And the two of them really just started working on various data visualizations, and noticed that it was a really time-consuming, resource-intensive thing, and we were just hearing about it earlier. And that really made them think about potentially creating a tool that allows people to do that without having to code and spend a lot of time doing that. And obviously, if you actually commission these, you'll know that if it's time-sensitive, obviously the delays are pretty annoying to deal with. So they dreamed up Flourish, and by 2016 they came up with a product with a mission to really empower journalists to tell impactful stories with data. And thankfully, it's now become one of the leading data storytelling platforms out there. And ultimately, what it helps you do is create interactive, embeddable visualizations that you can put anywhere, and you'll see in a second, in any of your Canva designs, embedded on your website, you name it. So there's a lot of options. And it really is as simple as going to, oh, this should be working, sorry. I think it's not really loading, but nonetheless, let me see, maybe our,
I can visualize it with my
You can visualize it. Well, I'll just speak through it. You basically have a library of tens and tens. I have plenty of examples for you, but it's just as simple as picking the right chart that you want to literally put on your article, whatever you're publishing, add the data, customize the look and feel, and then essentially publish it. Either create an embed code or add it to your Canva design. We'll see that in a second. And as such, it's now grown to be used by journalists worldwide, and you'll obviously recognize some of the names on the screen. And I think one of the most powerful things about this, and we'll deep dive into that in a second, is millions of viewers every day, and as such, I think my data's not working, but I'll tell you, I'll walk you through it. 1.5 million users every year, since we started We've had more than 1.5 million users create, so it's incredibly powerful. And one of the key things here, I have a feeling my my Wi-Fi went down. So give me just a second to see if I can. Yeah. It would be a pity to miss out on this. Isn't it just great, Ryan, when I'm talking about this?
Perfect.
Well, let me tell you this. You'll see a lot of...
Do you want to pair it to your phone?
Yeah, who's got a hotspot?
Yeah.
Do that.
We can do a hotspot.
Great.
Nonetheless, you'll see a really helpful reel right outside that automatically plays this, thankfully. It doesn't necessarily rely on the Wi-Fi. Yeah.
So while we're just pairing here, the kind of the sweet spot for us, I think, as well, for those, often there'll be folks in the room familiar with Canva, and there'll be folks in the room who are familiar with Flourish, right? The important piece, I think, for everyone this week is getting a better embeddability, if that's a word, getting that, get that piece. While we're just firing that up.
The social and video half of it. In this kind of Flourish, the Flourish data visualizations would just make it really easy because we can just go in and input the number and then leave it alone.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Non-data journos, right? Like that's
yeah, no, yeah.
Cool.
Amazing.
Thanks, Kat. Georgia,
Kat.
now that we've actually got connectivity back.
Cool, we got it. Okay, so I was telling you the fact that data storytelling has to be visual to be impactful. And this is why we made it our mission to really transform data and help you transform your data into really engaging stories. I pray to God that it plays. Please play. Well, no worries. More to show you outside. Yeah, I think it's genuinely.
Wi-Fi, we would have engaged.
Yeah, no worries. It's on a hotspot, so there. Together, they allow you to essentially create an entire story. I will keep moving with this. Please find me outside. I have all the resources for you to show you in a bit more detail and obviously with less lag. Also, if you work with high volumes of data and you're maybe more on the advanced side of things, you can also create 3D visualizations. This one, for example, is fully interactive. Apologies for that. It just keeps playing tricks on me. We work with WebGL, which essentially is used in gaming actually for 3D models. If the internet would help me, and again, I can show you at the juice bar, you can zoom in on these 3D globes. You can manipulate it in different, to see if that. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. Options there available for you. You can also gamify it, which is really great. So in this chart, essentially you can, elements that otherwise you'd have to code, you can easily create them in the platform and interesting fun facts. And if you actually click on these, which at the moment, because my internet is a little slow, it basically comes up with a pop-up, shows you more information. Hard code that, so that's another really great.
To this example of SBS, if it will come up. I just love the way, I didn't realize you were doing a daily data dive. Like, it's amazing.
Every morning.
Fantastic. It can't be that hard to do, clearly. That's super inspiring. And then what else have we got here? I think because of the Wi-Fi, let's see where that comes up. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I know you guys have been an amazing audience, and I know everyone's thinking lunch, but there is a little bit of a panel of special guests. So if you've got a question, make your way to the mic. And I just want to come back to you, Tay, because we just...
Yeah, so who here lives in Philly, is Philly based? A few of you, absolutely. Who here is loving Philly so far?
Yeah.
Everybody, right? Okay, so
correct answer.
Yeah, October 5th, we are launching the first ever Philly Story Fest. We've got 10 different newsrooms involved.
Also, pretty much like super platform agnostic, can go anywhere.
Yeah, and I feel it might be more of a deep dive around the WordPress stuff as well. Fantastic. Thank you. Great question. Hi.
Hello, my name is Shernay, independent journalist. This has been an excellent session.
Right.
I love Canva, and like you said, I'm learning new things.
Cool.
And so I wanted to get you guys' take on video, staying on that topic, but a longer form piece, even like 5 minutes plus. Have you guys had any experience with that within Canva, or mostly just short videos?
Sophia?
You saw the wheels turning. I haven't had an experience yet, kind of editing, longer form videos. It's something I've been thinking I need to do and work with, but I will say it's really simple. So far, my experience with Canva has been really simple in terms of just trimming and cutting down and splicing, and then I'd imagine just based on the capabilities I've seen Canva have already, like being able to add images in and text and everything. So I feel like it would probably be a lot simpler than Premiere or anything else, just simpler, more accessible. But yeah, I've used it for these presentations. I've used audio and spliced audio behind visuals, and it's been pretty easy to go in and cut and rearrange everything. And even adjust, like I explained, adjust the tone and the coloring and the audio.
And let's talk later, because if you're going to have a play in that space,
Yes.
I'd love to, because it's a bit of an open question, to be honest.
Yeah.
We've really focused on short form, and as we've built out the functionality, we're now seeing folks building out the durations as well in the format. So we'd love to come along for the ride. Okay, thanks. Let's do one more quick question and then wrap, because I think people are hungry.
Hello, my
Hi.
name is Katie, and I'm a social video editor. I primarily do short form video, but my question for the Canva thing is is there subtitling available? Because as we know, people on social media don't listen, they scroll and they read. And so do you have that easily accessible? Because that's our mandate at work, is we have to subtitle everything on social.
Yeah, I feel Kat's got the most experience in this.
Oh, so we don't use Canva for all of our video editing at the moment. There is closed captioning in Canva, but also a lot of the time for social, sometimes it's better to use the closed captioning that's generated within the platform. So I don't know if you've experimented with that. But yeah, we've been experimenting with that with YouTube, or starting to now. We're all on the journey, but yeah, the great thing about that is that it has translate built in. So the user can decide if they want closed captions, if they want it on or off, if they want a different language. So that's kind of what we're experimenting with at the moment for closed captioning.
And so to Di's hot tips, so that captioning feature is in already. It's evolving. There's the translate feature as well. I think that those refinements will help a lot as well. And that's not uncommon also for people to be using a mix of the Canvas solution or the in-platform solution. It's something we're very mindful of in this space as well, and for this particular, and to come and have a play as well at Juices. Okay, I think that's a good place for us to probably wind. Let me just say a couple of, do you mind clicking through, Di? Thanks. We can click back before we get to our smiling faces, actually. But what you've seen here is this idea of the newsroom to the boardroom, right? Which is a ton of you are using Canva for editorial, but the observation that I've been making is you've also got the keys to a digital transformation power piece across your organization, right? We see time and again the journalists are the early adopters of Canva and the masters, and we can see through all of our guests that broader application of the product, whether it's strategically, whether it's internal reporting, etc. And really encouraging journos to take that expertise and to evangelize across the business, because you've actually got a really powerful piece that can help the broader business and therefore help you get the resources that you need to do what you love to do, which is storytelling. So also